Welcome, welcome, everybody. You have joined the tipping point again, and I am so incredibly thankful that you do. You join us 3 nights a week, and just know that I am so incredibly grateful that you do. We offer the most amazing talent from this show, not only all over the United States, but all over the country. And we are just so, all of us, not only myself, but the people that I have on the show, the experts, the entertainers, we're all very grateful. So please know that. And please be sure that you share this show with your friends. We want as many people as possible tuning in. So tonight, I've got another question for you. Have you created a brand, either personal or professional, and you want it to be better? Probably the answer is yeah. Do you think you could reach more people with it? Do you think you could sell more product if your brand was fine-tuned and maybe had a little bit of a makeover? The answer to that is probably yes. I know for me it is. Do you feel like maybe you don't know where to go with this? You've created this product and you want to tell the rest of the world about it and you want people to view you as the expert, but you're not sure that your message is getting around, the way that it should be? Okay, this is a show for you. Tonight, I'm going to put his name up. I'm really excited. He's joining us from Chicago. He is a pastor. He is an award-winning branding expert. He owns a company called Brand Design. He's also created a tool that can help you with your branding, and that is Brandon McCurdy. How are you, Brandon?
Hey, Joanne. How are you doing tonight?
I am fantastic, and I'm so glad you're here. It's interesting on this show because, as you know, we bring on entertainers, but we also bring on experts in their field from all over the country, and you are that person tonight. You're joining us from Chicago, and you've got an amazing business. You're doing incredibly well, and I really wanted to introduce our viewers on the tipping point to you and what you do, and tonight we're going to be talking about branding and fine-tuning that, but also our purpose.
Awesome.
So tell us a little bit about you. Let's start in the beginning. How did you get to Chicago? I know you do more than just this. You're a jack of all trades, which many of us can identify with.
Yeah, so I grew up in Northwest Indiana, which is just in the Chicagoland area, and spent my life there till I was about 22. And then I graduated from college and I actually went into ministry and ended up in another suburb of Chicago, spent 7 years there, and eventually ended up just about, 25, 30 minutes from where I grew up, pastoring a church and running businesses. And I'm Chicago born and Chicago bred. Usually this wall behind me is all Chicago Cubs baseball cards.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm in the process of remodeling it. So they're all over the place right now. But I'm a diehard Cubs fan and grew up in the Chicagoland area. Met my wife in college, and we have 2 beautiful girls, and we're just loving it.
You're loving life and you're doing amazing things, and you're a jack of all trades. I mean, you are pastoring a church, right? And then you are the CEO of Brand Design. Your wife is busy doing all of her things as well, and helping to raise the kiddos. It's interesting because when we were talking in the green room, so many of us don't just have one job anymore.
Yeah, everybody's pretty much got a side hustle anymore. I mean, even in any facet of life, you're always looking for those opportunities, and the world affords them to it. I mean, if you would have said to your great-grandparents, hey, someday I'm going to go buy somebody's groceries for them, and I'm going to bring them to their house for them, and they're going to pay me to do that, they'd have thought you were insane. If you said to somebody, I'm going to be able to take this little box, and I'm going to go on the internet, and I'm going to help companies in another part of the world build their business and grow their business, and they're going to pay me to do that, they would have thought you were absolutely insane. But we have that opportunity, and because we have the opportunity, I always look at it as then we also have an obligation to the opportunity. If we have those opportunities and we don't take them, then we're missing out in a big way.
Well, it's absolutely true. And with your base being in ministry, and mine is as well, which some people don't know. I don't know if you guys know that or not. And that's what you and I are going to have to talk about later, about rebranding me, Brandon, because it gets confusing. But as people have these different jobs, it can become very confusing. And so I hate to use myself as an example, but let's just do that because I don't want to grab anybody else without permission. But so I've got the television shows, okay, and then I've got the Facebook show, and I have books, and I run an outreach ministry as well.
Sure.
Okay, all of that falls under my 501c3. Well, that can be very confusing, though. I had someone say to me just yesterday, Joanne, I know you do a lot of things, but I really, to be honest with you, I have no idea what you do. I don't get it.
Sure. And I think that aligns back to, I mean, you see that in many different facets of the corporate world, large company owners and different things, where they have learned this trait that when they brand themselves and they position themselves around a purpose and a theme, they can then go in any direction they want off of that purpose or theme. But they have to first establish that. I mean, you look at the highest of the high levels of the corporate world, the Amazons and the Apples and the major companies of the world. We're now seeing their CEOs positioning themselves as personal brands, so that when they have passion projects and when they have things that they want to go after, they have the flexibility to go after them without losing their messaging, without losing the brand that they've already put into place. And so what we're trying to help a lot of business owners now understand is, there was a study done a few years ago that the average person in their life now will have 12 micro careers. They will not stay with the same company. My father was with the same business for 35 years. He didn't change jobs from the time he was 19 until he retired.
Yeah.
Yet for me, I've been in multiple careers. My brother has been in multiple careers. My younger brother has been in even more careers. I mean, it's not as though we're going to be in one place. So therefore, we have to start thinking more along the lines of, what is it we want out of life? What's the purpose? And how do we communicate that purpose to other people to get them to come along on the journey with us?
Okay, and that's true, and I'm glad that you said that too, Brandon, because you're right. Our parents stayed on the same job, or they owned their company, and that was all that they did. I was a psychotherapist. I was a dental hygienist and a secondary combat medic. I was a CEO for a media research company. And people are like, what in the world? Is there anything that you can't do or that you won't do? And I'm thinking, not really.
Sure.
If God gives me the ability and he moves me in a certain direction and he has gifted me and said, here's an opportunity, by goodness, I'm going to walk through that door. Now, that doesn't mean I'll be there forever. Maybe it's a season and I'm going to learn the things that I need to learn that will bring me to the next place. But that is too, at the same time, as awesome as that may sound, when you do this kind of things, it can be kind of confusing.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's just kind of, again, coming back to that point of identifying for you what it is that you want out of life and what it is you want people to know you for. I always say to folks, a brand is a promise. That's all it is. It's a promise to you that says, I'm going to fulfill on this. And it's not even fulfilling necessarily on a product or a service. We always think that way, but that's more about customer service and the quality of our goods. That's not talking about our brand. Our brand promises a feeling. It promises an emotional attachment. And when we don't know what that emotional attachment ought to be, then we're not able to fulfill on it. And therefore, we don't know what we're doing and what we're selling. And we do. Entrepreneurs are known for this, running from place to place and thing to thing and never really getting any traction behind anything. But the reason that happens is because they don't step back themselves and do an introspection and say, here is the purpose for my life. Here's where I'm going. Here's how I want people to feel about that. And I know that society needs this. That's so often is the problem as well, is we look and we say, I want to be this, this, and this, and I want to do this, this, and this. And we look very selfishly upon those things. But when we step back for a moment, we say, society needs this. The world needs this. Businesses need this. I can fulfill that, and I can do it in such a way where the person will feel comforted. They'll feel satisfied. They'll feel whatever that word is for you that you anchor back to. Now I can then go forward and say, look, whatever it is I'm doing, whether I'm selling marketing services or whether I'm pastoring a church or whether I'm selling widgets on the street corner, I want you to feel this, and I want to deliver this to your life.
So branding can be selfish, and we may not even know that we're being selfish because we're trying, okay, this is what I think everybody wants. I'm going to give it. This is what I want to do. They can like it or leave it, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're not being true to ourselves and to our viewers or our customers.
And usually that won't take you anywhere. Most people in most marketing, I mean, we understand as soon as you stop talking about the person's problem, they stop listening. If you're not addressing an issue that they're having with a solution that you have, then there's no interest for them. We go along the lines of thinking that if we just simply self-exalt and self-promote and put ourselves out there over and over again without ever providing solutions for customers, that somehow that's going to grow a brand. And it doesn't at all. Most of all, the major brands or even the personal brand people that you would look and say, I want to be this guy someday. What you find when you trace back through everything that they say and everything that they do, the commonality and the common thread that runs through all of them is they're addressing problems people are having and they're giving solutions to those problems. From there, then they can say, I'm the guy who's helped X number of people solve this problem. And I've helped this many people do this so that I can help you as well.
This is fascinating because I think maybe, and I might be wrong, but the majority of people, dare I say, kind of are coming at this the wrong way,
Hmm.
including myself sometimes. And we have to be very authentic, Brandon, don't we? And honest
Yeah.
about why we're doing what we're doing, what we want to do, how we want to deliver it, what we want to deliver, to whom, and the reason behind this really kind of goes back to what everybody talks about, their why.
Right.
Why are we doing it? Now, is it for selfish reasons or whatever? I mean, that's one thing. But if you're really trying to impact a lot of people and help a lot of people, you've got to be truly authentic with yourself and your walk.
Right. Yeah. Usually, when I sit down with a client, it's a little confusing for them at first, because one of the first things we usually do is I make them do an avatar map, where we sit down and map out who their customer is, where they live, all the way down to what age are they, do they live in an urban environment, do they live in a more rural environment, and usually they're sitting there about 10 minutes into that thinking, this is frustrating. We haven't talked about me at all yet. But before
Oh,
we can talk about you, we have to talk about who. And if we don't know who we're talking to, then we don't even know what to say to them, and we just end up, again, going in whatever direction we feel like going that day, which is important. I mean, we want to stay on purpose. We want to do things that we enjoy doing, we love doing. But at the end of the day, if that's all only self-consuming, from a spiritual perspective, that's
mhm.
not a satisfying life. And from a business perspective, that's not going anywhere. Nobody ever paid anybody for being awesome. They paid them because they provided them a good or a service.
I mean, dare I say that there's a good amount of people that may not even realize that they're doing that, including myself. Maybe I am. If I were to sit down and do this avatar that you're talking about, I may not be able to answer a lot of those questions.
Sure.
And if I can't, that means that I don't truly understand who my customer base is and what they're wanting. Correct?
Right. Because usually what we want to do is take everything that you put out content wise off of an avatar map and start segmenting it up and saying, look, this piece of content hit this point and this piece of content hit this person, and be able to map it all out. Most of the time, when you sit down with somebody at the first time, you draw it all out and you take everything that they've created, and there's really nowhere to put it. And
Mhm.
by doing that, we're not hitting anybody because we don't know who we're going after. It's a design principle. When in graphic design, it says if everything is important, then nothing is important. If everything is bold, then nothing is bold. If everything is light, then nothing is light. There must be that contrast that says this is what's important. This is what I really want to be said. Most marketing is just a series of vague statements. We just make a bunch of vague statements and hope somebody latches onto it. The great brands that you and I know and love have very clearly defined statements that we can grasp onto and hold on to them, and we know what they're all about. Therefore, we can then tie back to the products and services that they want us to know about.
Hold that thought. I'm going to pull up a clip.
Over the last few years, influencer marketing has exploded. It's kind of taken over the space. And it's something that every single business needs to be thinking about how they could integrate it into their advertising strategy. There is a whole group of people out there who are influencing other people and making choices and decisions and helping people decide what is good and what is bad. And you want to make sure that you're in the place of that. You want to make sure that your products are being talked about in those conversations. 80% of marketers say influence marketing is effective, and 89% of marketers say it works just as well, if not better, than other marketing channels. There is a cult following of people who go to Costco. There are people who love going to Costco because they feel that when they go there, the promise that is given to them of what they're expecting is returned, is reciprocated. You think of folks who love Chick-fil-A, I'm one of them, who love that company and love what they stand for and love what the food, and they love the experience and everything about them. And yet so often if you go to a restaurant or you go to a store who has given you that kind of a promise and that kind of commitment and your deep-seated enjoyment of it, and they don't fulfill that promise, how much more difficult it is. What we're trying to create in a brand, and the reason why your purpose is so important, is because we want people to have a visceral reaction towards our company. We want them to have a good reaction towards us. We want them to be loyal followers. But if we don't tell them what the purpose is and reinforce that purpose and fulfill the promise, then we're going to have a hard time building a brand.
So I played both of them. They both kind of fit into what we're doing. But
Yeah.
let's go back to that. You're talking about Chick-fil-A.
Hmm.
Okay. And they make us feel a certain way. They deliver what they say they'll deliver. They over deliver,
Sure.
right? Their brand is everywhere. But we know that we can trust the brand. Talk about that.
So a great example is, and I'm old enough for this, and I think you're old enough for this as well. Is back in the '90s, George Herbert Walker Bush was running for was the president of the United States, and when he ran for president, he said something very clear. He said, "There's going to be no new taxes." And what he did is he came back and he didn't get elected a second time because he added new taxes. I know we're not going to go political. Just the point of the fact is, when we make promises and we don't fulfill on them, it damages the brand in such a way because the greater the promise, the greater the responsibility to keep it. And when we can't keep that promise, then at the end of the day, we end up just leaving our customer feeling, again, they feel like they've been mistreated. They feel like they've been disappointed. It's watching sports teams so often, right? People get so passionate about their sports teams. And a lot of times it's because the coach or the owner will stand up there and say, we're going to win a championship this year. And then they don't win a championship that year. The greater the promise, the greater responsibility to keep it. Someone like Chick-fil-A spends millions and millions of dollars every year giving out free meals for times that they messed up service. They may have not made any mistake, but in the mind of the customer, they're going to give them a free sandwich anyway because it's not worth the damage to the brand.
If you roll up at Chick-fil-A and you don't get the friendly service and
Right.
the chicken that is the end all be all of all chicken, and I mean, you're devastated, you're seriously wounded. You're like, you told me
Right.
this is what I was going to get. Or if you're going to put in your store window the best cheeseburgers in the entire county, they
Right.
better be.
That's right. Because people will ask you about it. I mean, they'll either number one, they won't ask you about it, which is even the worst because then you just use the opportunity to make it right, or they will tell you about it and tell you that they're not coming back again.
And
It
they'll
works
tell everybody else, Brandon, too. They'll take to social
absolutely.
media and tell them.
Well, and this is the whole point. I mean, when a few months ago or a few years ago, I was working with a client and he was dead set against, he's not going to be on Facebook. He doesn't want his company on Facebook. He's not going to be out there. Called me about 6 months later and he goes, hey, I need help. I have a problem. So what's the problem? He said, somebody who didn't like my service is now just destroying me on Facebook and I have no way to push against it because the only content out there is bad content about me. There's nothing good to offset it. And so that's the whole point of this is if you're not telling people what the promise is and showing them how you fulfilled it over and over and over again, somebody is telling your story. Years ago when Twitter really started getting hot, people thought they could just ignore customer reviews on Twitter. They thought they could just say, well, people are going to post what they're going to post, and nobody believes that stuff anyway. And you literally watched entire major companies take huge dives because they were just getting destroyed on Twitter. On the converse, you had companies like Wendy's who stepped up and said, we're going to hire full-time comedians to write our Twitter feed for us. Literally, they hired professional comedians to handle the Twitter for Wendy's. And what happened? Wendy's exploded on Twitter. They crush it. They're one of the top followed things on Twitter because they understood the fact that their customer, it wasn't even just simply about you actually fulfilling the promise. It's you making it and then fulfilling it, and then making it and fulfilling it and making it, fulfilling it. It's like any other relationship. And that's what we have to be able to provide to a customer is here's the clear, concise, what I'm going to deliver for you, how I'm going to make your life better. And then I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to promise again. And then I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Be better than anybody else. Do exactly what you said you're going to do. So bottom line, Brandon, is have integrity with your brand and your personal life.
Absolutely. And it seems like we look at major companies and we say, well, they don't seem to have much integrity. But when you really think about it, they deliver so often. When they don't, they suffer for it. You can see it in the cell phone industry so specifically. I mean, when I was coming up, we were, it was early, the everybody had a Moto Razor, right? If you had a Motorola phone today, that wouldn't mean anything to anybody because they lost their way when it came to delivering for the customer. Now you have to have an iPhone. But the day comes where Apple stops delivering on what it is that they've been promising, they will suffer for it.
They will. What about, go back to the brand thing. People, and we talked about the side hustle. So many people have different things.
Right.
Like I said, I've got the shows, the books, the motivational speaking, and then the outreach. Okay.
Right.
All of those things. And you're trying to market all of those things. For someone like me, which there are a lot of people who do a lot of things like I do, do we brand each thing separately, or do we brand one thing all together? Which is best?
So I always look at it and say, who is the customer as to whether or not I'm going to brand them together. So I'll use myself because I know my, so for example, for me, Social Brand Pro is a company that is for anybody and everywhere. If you own a business or you're trying to do anything on social media, it's for you. Brand Design is a marketing agency that's more for larger companies, mid-sized companies. We do branding work for them. I also work with, I also own a couple companies, co-own a couple companies that do a speakers bureau, and one that does live events, and I own another that does, oh good grief, what did we just start the other day? A publishing company. I mean, we're doing all these different things. I have to look and say, who is the customer as to whether or not I'm going to brand them together. But at the end of the day, sitting on top of all of it is my personal brand that I can say, do you know, like, and trust me? If you know, like, and trust me, let me tell you about this product or service that I can help you with. So it's kind of a both and. You have to look at the customer and say, okay, so for example, those are two separate companies. My others, I work with a partner, and all of those are branded together because it's the same customer. And the customer knows that brand. Therefore, we can tell them about those different stories. It's just a matter of who the customer is as to whether we brand it together or not.
So, for instance, so my 501c3 is the Joanne Johnson Media Foundation. That's on top. I also have Joanne Johnson Media, which is an LLC. But then the branches of that are this television show, that television show, the books, and the outreach.
I would look at it more and say Joanne Johnson on top, and then who is the audience for each of those, as to whether or not I would even try to say they need to have matching color schemes and they need to have similar looks and all those different things. It would be more about who is the customer, and do I need to delineate between the customer for the experience to stay the same. So for example, I do a lot of work with real estate people, and for them, their buyer and their seller are two completely different customers. A lot of times they will literally create two separate companies, one for the buyer and one for the seller, because they're such different experiences. And so I think you have to look at it and say, if the 501c3 has to have another feeling or another emotion to it, if it's more of a, you need to be in a benevolent mind to work with that, then it needs to dictate that, where the other one, if it's more business minded, and then you as Joanne Johnson can come and say, hey, look, here is this, this benevolent effort I'm doing, and here's my business entity that I have going.
Yeah, and this is fantastic. And for those that are just joining, I hope you guys are going to hit the replay on this. I hope that you share this with your friends, because where I live, and I am connected to a lot of people by God, grace. It's just wonderful. But a lot of these people, they all own businesses. They own more than one. And I'm thinking of a friend in particular who owns a marketing company, but she also owns a 501c3. She's got the two different things. Right. And her brand and her message can get confusing as well, because maybe some people know her for the marketing and some people know her now for her ministry. And so we need somebody like you really to be able to give us a makeover, if you will. And I have on the ticker, I'm going to put it back up. I'm vacillating between all of our different contacts. You guys, I want you to get with Brandon on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/Brandon McCurdy. He's got these nuggets of wisdom. If you hit Brand Pro, I think it is, or Design Pro, you'll see it. Okay. When you go there, he's got these nuggets of wisdom. And I played a couple of the clips. He's got all over the place. He's got all of these things. You guys want to catch those. They're fantastic. And on his website, he's got a blog, and he gives all of this information away, which is so interesting to me and so wonderful. But that, of course, is from your pastor's heart, I'm sure. You're just feeding into your customers and your potential customers, but people in general too, because you can see so much of what we're talking about, so much more of what we're talking about on all of these different places. So I do encourage everyone to go there. But Brandon, let's talk some more, because this stuff is so good. What if you could give an entrepreneur who maybe had multiple, streams of revenue, a solid piece of advice, just a down and dirty, what would it be?
I would look for, well, first and foremost, I was just, what's the aspiration? Because the aspiration is going to determine how much we spend on the front end. A lot of times folks look and say, I'm just looking to replace my, my W-2. I'm just looking to make a good living for myself. Other people, I'm working with a brand right now, and his is world domination. I mean, he wants to be the next Tony Robbins. He wants to be the next, and those are two different aspirations, and both are great. Neither is wrong. But a lot of times people will jump into this and say, well, I just need to throw a bunch of money at it and I'm going to throw all these resources at it. And I always say, okay, time out just a second. Where do you see this going and where do you want it to go? Because you know this from business. Once you get the ball rolling, it's very difficult to get it to stop.
Yes.
Once things get moving, you have to decide where it is you're going with it. So that's always the first piece is what's the aspiration? Where do you want to go? My wife owns an apparel company. And she's in the same, she wants to take over the world with it. She's in department stores. She sells on Zulily. She's sold like 10,000 shirts a month at one. I mean, she's crazy with it, but the aspiration is different than somebody who says, I just want to make, I want to make a few extra bucks every month. So that's number one. Once you have that in place, I always tell people start with the feeling that you want to create. What is the feeling you want people to have when they interact with you as a brand? Because once we have that, then we can determine all of the pieces that come under it. For a while, I was driving I was meeting a client in Virginia. I was driving down the road and they had a sign that said Hercules Construction, but it was done in like a script font, like a really pretty script font.
Yeah.
And to me, it was such a perfect picture of what most companies do is they say, I like this and I like that, but I want my customer to feel something completely different. And until we determine that at the top and say, I'm Joanne, you're going to be working with me. This is how you're going to feel when you work with me. Now let me tell you about all the pieces that I have. And then they'll make you feel the same way. That way it bolts all together. If it doesn't bolt all together, people just end up feeling so frustrated that I thought I was going to get this and instead I got that.
And what if what they're doing is making everybody feel good, but they haven't thought of a way yet to monetize any of it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You have to always look and say, well, how are we going to make money at this thing? I mean, we've canned more businesses than we've started just because you run a pro forma on it and the numbers just don't work. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing too, is, I mean, just because you think it's a great idea doesn't mean everybody else thinks it's a great idea. You really have to take an honest look and say, is this truly something that people want, that I love doing, and that it can actually make money? And if you can't do all three of those things, then at the end of the day, either you're going to wear out, nobody's going to want it, or it's not going to make any money. And that doesn't work. That's not entrepreneurship. That's brokenness.
It's a hobby. But maybe too, there's a way that it could be monetized. You just have not yet figured it out. So perhaps sitting with somebody like you could say, okay, you're out here making everybody feel great. You're doing a service, you're blah, blah, blah. But have you considered adding this piece or that piece to whatever? Because maybe you're only one step short.
Right. And that's a lot of it. A lot of the times is being able to show somebody, look, you need to repackage this in such a way where it makes sense to people. For example, right now, a lot of folks were selling the space I work in, a lot of high end, whether they be courses or whether they be live events or different things. And what we're finding is people don't want to spend that, especially right now, people don't want to spend that big ticket number. So how do we reinvent that to get to a place where people do want to do it? And we're finding is that's a subscription model. Switch people to, they're used to paying a Netflix bill, they're used to paying a Hulu bill, saying to somebody, I don't need $1,500 today, I need $49 a month. That's a better way of looking at it. And it's just taking an honest look at your business and saying, is my customer willing to do this with me? If they're not, they're willing to do something. I just have to figure out what that is.
That is fantastic. Brandon McCurdy, it has been so fantastic having you. I really do want you to come back because I know that we've not finished all of this. We could probably talk for about 48 hours straight. This is very valuable stuff. And I know that our viewers that are watching tonight are thinking, I want more of this. I'm not done hearing this because we did this so quickly in a half an hour. But again, you guys go to his Facebook page, tell them how to do it, Brandon, because I'm going to miss it.
Yeah, so if you go to facebook.com/Brand McCurdy, there's a ton of videos there. They're on Instagram, they're on Facebook, they're all over the place. It's all from a course that I put on that's it's called the 7 Strategy. It's like 56 videos on marketing and branding that take you through 7 different phases of it. It's coming out later this month. It'll be on the Social Brand Pros site. So that's coming out soon.
And get with him definitely. Brandon, thank you. I do hope you come back and see us again soon. It was wonderful to have you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joanne.
Thank you. Okay, you guys know I am full on serious with this. Listen, I am going to be getting with him because I'm messing up my own brand. And those who follow me, you guys are like, yeah, okay, the books, the TV shows, the Facebook thing, and it's confusing. And here's what I am going to say. If I'm confused about what I do, I know y'all are confused about what I do. And I know that there's a lot of other people who are feeling the same way. So Brandon McCurdy is your man. This is where you want to go. He is a wealth of knowledge, and we are going to invite him back. I'm going to go ahead right now and call this part 1, and then we're going to have him back, hopefully, if he will grace us. Hopefully he's going to nod at me from the green room and tell me yes. In fact, he's got a big nod back there. Praise the Lord. All right, so there's more things to talk about. Again, I'm Joanne Johnson, your host. This has been The Tipping Point, and I'm going to do our little outro. But before I let you go, my darlings, as always, okay, be loving, be kind, be humble, and as always, lead with love. I'll see you next time.